Now, Mr. Callanan with the ECR.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, let me also firstly congratulate Spain on their great victory on Sunday night. Clearly, Germany isn't the most competitive European country at everything, and of course, at least it allows Spain to boast of some success from the Euros. But, well, they're certainly more successful than France were at the Games. Anyway, when we look under the surface of last week's summit, we find that, in reality, the decisions taken were, of course, just another set of short-term stopgaps. Perhaps they relieve the immediate pressure points, but it was hardly the game-changer that the Irish Prime Minister claimed. Now, using the bank recapitalisation and buying bonds may give Spain and Italy some breathing space. However, I do find it slightly ironic that the same people in this House that want to bash the bankers, that want to propose a financial transactions tax to punish the bankers at every opportunity, are of course the same people that are perfectly happy for the risks and profligacy of those same bankers to be transferred onto the backs of taxpayers through these bailout funds. Initially, of course, the markets responded positively on Friday. Finally, perhaps they had seen some signs of life from EU leaders. However, as is usual in these things, already the deal seems to be unravelling. Countries like Finland, like the Netherlands, are challenging the new roles for the bailout funds that they seem to have agreed to in the summit on Thursday night. And when the dust has settled, when the small print is read, and when the details are finally discussed, I fear that the outcome of this summit could be far less seismic than many in this House want to believe. And that, of course, is because, yet again, the fundamental questions have not been answered. The lack of competitiveness of many countries has not been addressed. The possible mutualisation of debts has, of course, yet again been avoided. Relying on the ESM, the EFSF, is no long-term solution to this crisis because they are not bottomless pits of money with the power to grant our every wish. If they are being committed to bank bailouts, if they are being used for secondary bond purchases, will there in fact be anything left over for the sovereign bailouts that, let us remember, they were originally intended? And let's not pretend that even this relatively small shift in German policy was arrived at with great harmony. Even for these few small concessions, it seems that Italy had to hold the proverbial gun to Germany's head. In reality, what we saw in the Council highlighted that even for countries in the euro, the mentality is still one of maximising national interests. Now, of course, don't get me wrong, I fully support national governments fighting their corner. But let's also be clear that the euro was never a tool aimed at helping countries to defend their national interests. As Margaret Thatcher remarked in 1990, the single currency is about the politics of Europe. It is about a federal Europe by the back door. And of course, the great irony of it is that this very tool that was intended to unify the peoples of Europe is in fact now driving them further apart. Because it was always inevitable that permanent fiscal transfers would be required from the north to the south, with Germany acting as the paymaster of less competitive countries. And it was also inevitable that we would see the supranationalisation of economic policy, effectively rendering national democracy defunct within the eurozone. Will, in fact, in the future there be much point in holding elections in many eurozone countries if their budgets, if their fiscal policies are going to be rewritten by Brussels every time? And this is not a small point that should be brushed under the carpet. It is a fundamental issue of accountability of government to the peoples in their own democracies. And at the moment, of course, we face an impasse. Germany wants to supplant economic policy at the EU level. The Mediterranean countries want Germany to underwrite their debts. I am reminded of the story of the two politicians. One says to the other, "OK, let's be honest with each other." The other one says, "All right, but you first." Inevitably, of course, someone has to move first. But let's never forget that there is an alternative. It is for the eurozone to reduce in size so that some countries have the ability to devalue their way back to relative competitiveness. That, of course, would be a political disaster for the euro's cheerleaders, but for some countries it remains the least worst option and a possible way out of this crisis. Thank you.